I had only been there a few months when I started to recognize that there was something that was not quite right. I wasn't feeling right. It wasn't feeling purposeful or meaningful the way that I intended it to. It didn't feel like my right place. I had had a promotion, I had had a raise. So one day I had to go to my boss and I gave my 2-week notice. They were very surprised.
Welcome to Stories of Hope in Hard Times, the show that explores how people endure and even thrive in difficult times, all with God's help. I'm your host, Tamara K. Anderson. Join me on a journey to find inspiring stories of hope and wisdom learned in life's hardest moments. Hey guys, have you started thinking about Mother's Day yet? Every Mother's Day, I am looking for a card or something, a gift to give my mom, my sisters, my friends. And it's hard for me to sometimes find those gifts. And so today, I'm so excited to tell you about this booklet, The Mother's Might. It's a perfect, simple, inexpensive gift you can give your friends, your family, your sisters, anyone that you want to share this story with. And it will be meaningful. It's not just a little piece of candy that they eat and forget. It's something they can read over and over again, because so often we, as women, feel alone and overwhelmed and burdened, and like there's so many things weighing upon our shoulders. And what I love about this story is that it points us to Jesus Christ in our times of trouble, that He understands us, He loves us, He knows what we're going through, and He is more than willing to help us bear that burden. And I love that about this story, that it gives not only me hope, but it will convey that sense of hope for all of you. So get your copy of it today, tamarakanderson.com/store. You can order 1, 2, 10, 20, however many you want, and we will get those to you so you can get them distributed by Mother's Day. All right, now on to our show. My guest today is a wife, mother of 3 daughters, and has served as a youth leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints almost every year of her adult life. Doing so has taught her the faithful capacity of youth and a respect for the parents who teach them. Her book, Spiritual Resilience, Leading Our Youth to Go and Do, is now available on paperback, ebook, and audiobook. I am pleased to present Sharla Goettl. Sharla, are you ready to share your story of hope?
Yes, I would love to. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, this is so fun. The more Sharla and I have gotten to know each other, the more we realize we have in common. So we both kind of grew up in Arizona for some of our growing up years, and that's just really fun. But in fact, one of her uncles is one of my junior high teachers. How's that for a small world?
That's right. Same town I grew up in.
Pretty nuts. Anyway, so one of the cool things about Sharla is she dreams about and loves traveling. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Tell me some of the trips you've taken.
Oh, I wasn't joking about the dreaming. I actually dream about it. Like at night, I really dream about traveling. So, and I've gone to many places in that capacity. But my family and I, we do really like to go to new places, meet new people, and have new experiences. Some of my favorites have been, um, we went to Thailand. We traveled through a couple of cities in Thailand. Bangkok, of course, was amazing, but we went out to this itty bitty island in the middle of the sea. It's called Sokonoi, and it is an island that was very different than the rest of Thailand, in that it was 90% Muslim rather than 95% Buddhist. And so you experienced a whole new culture there, and it was just a really beautiful experience. Of course, the beach was amazing, but the people were very warm, and they taught us some of their craft, and it was lovely. It was great.
Wow, That sounds absolutely amazing. Being able to go and explore different people and different cultures. And you also have gone to visit where some of your people came from. What was
Okay.
it? Croatia.
Yes, yes, we
Tell
went.
me a little bit about that.
So Croatia is a country. It's just across from Italy, so it's just north of Greece and east of Italy. Has an amazing coastline. It's really beautiful. Um, Croatia, however, is part of what used to be Yugoslavia. So Slovenia, Bosnia, Croatia. There's several countries, very small countries that are all combined right there that were part of the Soviet Union. And when it broke up in the 1980s, it left the seeds of civil strife and created a civil war in the 1990s, which is the most recent European war that we have in our history. Croatia was a center of a lot of fighting and a lot of destruction of their cities and their towns. That's where my family is from. In fact,
Wow.
my grandfather's family is from a town called Karlovac, and Karlovac is just south of the capital, Zagreb. But it's an area which is not often toured by visitors, where you
Hmm.
have some of the more popular sites like Zagreb or Split or Dubrovnik, which are areas that see thousands and thousands of visitors. Karlovac is not. However, it is a military site, and being able to travel to that city, I was really excited to see the church where my grandfather's family went to, or the streets that they would walk down, because it's not a very large city. But I wasn't prepared to see the bullet holes and the damage that still pockmarked the facades of the streets and the cities. I wasn't prepared to drive out into the countryside to some of the smaller hamlets where other family members were from. I wasn't prepared to just drive down the highway and see whole houses just completely pockmarked with bullet holes.
Mm.
This area just hasn't been revitalized the way that the other tourist locations have been. So it made me very grateful that my ancestors chose a different path in life, and they came to the States and they immigrated, and they weren't there for that fighting. But
What an amazing story and family history you come from. And I'm excited we get to dive into that just a smidge today, just because we can learn so much from the people we come from. And you mentioned this a little bit in your book, so I think it'll be fun to dive into. Let's dive into your grandpa a little bit. You talk about him in your book as being kind of a rough and tumble guy in Chicago. I mean, 1930s, he was a bootlegger. Tell me a little bit about Mr. George Papa.
yes, so Papa is my maiden name, strong Croatian last name. My grandfather, George Michael Papa Sr., he has been a legendary figure in my life. The stories that I've learned about his life have really shaped me, have been a foundation of my testimony growing up, and I was so proud of him. Um, not because not just because of how close he was to the spirit, but also because of where he came from, and because of the way that he chose to change his life, because of the way that he chose to improve himself day by day in his daily choices. He had 5 sons. Every single one of them were stubborn and hot-headed. Um, his wife was an absolute saint. she
Probably
she
had to
was
be.
she was kind and intelligent and graceful. Uh, she was an angel of a woman, and yet raised 5 boys of her own, plus 5 brothers, which she basically raised herself. No sisters, no daughters.
Wow.
But my grandfather, he grew up in Chicago. Both of his parents immigrated from Croatia, and they lived in a small town called Benald in just outside of Chicago. Well, this town was populated by many Croatians, and they were a coal mining community. They worked very, very hard deep in the coal mines, which didn't pay very well. The Great Depression was coming in. Prohibition was certainly a part of American society. And Al Capone decided that he had something he would like these coal miners to do, and it wasn't mine coal. So they actually they built a mill and disguised this mill. And inside that mill, they produced 2,000 gallons a day of Croatian beer on behalf of Al Capone and his crime syndicate. My great grandfather was very much in the thick of it, and that was his job day in and day out. My grandfather was growing up in that experience, and for all intents and purposes was planning to be part of that. But he had different ideas. He loved racehorses. He loved the environment. He had a unusual skill for training these racehorses. And when he was a young man, he ended up landing his first job working in Chicago as a stable hand along with his brother, and they ended up training and caring for Al Capone's racehorses.
Oh my goodness!
So that was the beginning of a long history of him loving racehorses and training them and working very, very hard to know exactly what they needed. And he was very good at what he did.
Wow, isn't it amazing how different people have different gifts, and you figure out what you're good at. And sometimes you're blessed to work in it, and sometimes you're not. Now, tell me the story of how he went from being this rough and tumble guy to a conversion to Jesus Christ. How did that happen?
Well, there were a number of roundabout curves and twists in his story. He actually escaped from the mob in Chicago and ended up in California, where he worked at the famous Santa Anita racehorse track. He trained really famous horses.